You're listening to QCast, presented by Qcella Media. Please consider giving generously to Qcella's nonprofit mission. To find out more about our mission and to make a donation, visit our website at qcast.qcella.org. Your tax-deductible donation will help us continue bringing you quality podcasts just like this one.
I may be bruised, but I'm not broken. You can't take away my soul. You tried to tell me I don't count, but I know in my heart that's not true. So you cannot take me down that path. I'll make it without you. I may be bruised, but I'm not broken. My life counts for something, and you wake up and I'll be gone. You'll know that you were wrong. Welcome to my show, Shades of Gender. I'm your host, Terry Ryan. Thank you for listening to us today. We'll be talking about all gender identity issues, including the transgender, cross-dressers, and non-binary gender individuals with self-identifying and who identify with these groups. The definitions of these individuals are often misused and certainly misunderstood. Our goal is to identify these groups, listen to their stories, and their journey in life to get a better understanding of who they are and how they're doing in society today. And in spite of how the media may characterize who these people are and what others may say as their definitions of what these labels represent, our goal is to get to know the real people behind these definitions. So, today I'm very excited to have someone I actually just met, but is very active in the Coachella Valley, and this is outside, for those of you not living in the area, we're in Palm Springs area, and I have Thomi Clinton, and Thomi is very involved, is very involved, and I'm going to let you, rather than me define her, I'm going to have Thomi answer some questions, and as I start out these shows, because I hate labels, but as I say that, then I ask to identify. So I only do this because it's a radio show, and also I think it's important for an audience to have some idea of who they're listening to, because voices can be deceiving. And so I'm asking you, how do you identify Thomi on the gender scale?
Well, first thing, thank you for having me on the show. Labels are not too bad. It's the people who judge them. Just so you know, that's usually what makes people afraid of labels. So I identify as a non-binary trans woman. I'm attracted to men. Prior to this, I was trying to live as a gay male, and it wasn't very successful. And I was always very effeminate growing up. And so...
when you say you're an effeminate, this is interesting because, effeminate's, it's I guess it's behavior. It is, so we go back when we say feminine, like our femme self early on, or being that kind of that girl. A lot of the people that I've had on the show that are both cross-dressers, self-defining and transgender women, have stated that they started cross-dressing early on, or they were interested in two things. One, the clothes, the woman's clothes, whether it was her sister's clothes, and beyond, the early play that we do as a young child. And some of them were really interested in the woman's, like girls' dolls and, those type of things that were self-identifying for girls to play with. Now I know things are changing. Now all the kids play with an iPad, or they play with their phones, and they're playing games. And there's, I quite frankly, I'm excited about that for children, because they seem to be able to play with different things now that boys and girls play with some of the same things. But how about yourself when you were young? Maybe go through your childhood a little bit and what your background was like. And
yeah, excuse my voice is kind of raspy. I'm still recuperating from Pride.
Oh,
and as I reach 50, it seems like it take longer. So I approached my mom. I was really terrified, and I approached my mom about. I said, I think I want to be a girl, And so, one of the things that I liked to do the girl things. But then my father moved us out to the country in Arkansas, where I had to, I wasn't really exposed to a lot of things. Back then, there really wasn't many words.
So you were
that.
back, if you're close to 50, so you were born like in what, mid-60s? No, late 60s?
70.
70.
Well, she makes me old, huh? Jeez.
Oh, I'm older than you are.
Time to go get some
I obviously
Botox.
I can't. I don't know. So you were born, what year were you born?
I was born in 1970.
Okay, so now where you're born, because I can't do my math, obviously. So 1970 you were born. You were born in a town in Arkansas.
Mm-hmm.
You were in a bigger city, and then your family moved to a farm, like out
Well,
of the
I was born in East Chicago, Indiana. I was trying to stay in my mom's womb. Her birthday is the 4th of August. Mine's the 5th of August. I thought it was very comfortable.
Oh, so I leave, right?
Yeah, I'm like,
I've got everything here.
Hey, free rent.
I was the same way, actually. My mother was in labor like 20 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was like, it was horrible outside of Chicago. So we were born in the same area.
Yeah, East Chicago, Indiana. People always question me, that doesn't exist. I'm like, actually, it does.
Yes, it does, yes.
And so when things started collapsing in Indiana from the steel mills and things is when my father decided he wanted to move out to the country because it was the end of the times. And
so he worked in a steel mill?
He worked in steel mills, and he also was a truck driver.
Okay.
Yeah.
So and then you have brothers and sisters?
I have 2 sisters.
Okay, 2 sisters.
Yeah.
So you had clothes to play with?
I had clothes to play with. They had dolls. One of my sisters was extremely wild, and and then the other one was a little bit more centered,
right,
and more tolerant of different things. But yeah, I was always find myself with even my Star Wars figures taking Princess Leia's clothes and trying to put them on Luke Skywalker, and or there was this 3-armed creature from one of the Space Odysseys, and I tried to say, well, I wonder if I can cut little holes in the sides and make Princess Leia's clothes fit that. I was always playing.
So you're
around.
already your dolls. You were dressing differently.
Yeah.
You weren't just putting on the clothes that supposedly were supposed to be on those dolls.
Yeah,
So there was kind of a self-identifying.
So it's about exploring your own self.
Right. And you were the middle child, or were you?
I was the youngest.
A youngest. Okay. So you're 2. When you said your one child was kind of wild, what do you mean by that? Your sister?
Oh, well, she put someone in the dryer.
Oh, that's wild. Yeah, I had
hung them upside down from the second story from their shoes.
So you always
ran away. Was in Florida.
Wow.
Yeah.
And she was your eldest?
That was the oldest.
So you kind of stayed away from her, so you didn't go into the dryer, or
I'm not sure if she put me in the dryer or they saved me from a dryer, but I remember a close dryer
I have
opening.
to tell
It was a big, wide dryer.
I know you and I have synergies here, because I had a cousin who was crazy. Well, I say crazy, but he was a wild child, right? He was my age, and it was a boy. And I was over visiting my aunt, and who was, my aunt's son was my cousin, and we were about 8. And I went back there, and my parents were, my mom was talking to my aunt, and I'm playing with my cousin, and he looks over at me stone cold and says, "I'm putting you into the dryer."
Yeah, it was a thing.
It wasn't a thing. And I was like, what? I'm this little sweet little girl, and what do you mean you're putting me in the dryer? And he opens it up, and he turns it on, and it was one of those, and at 8 you could fit in the dryer, right?
Yeah.
And I was terrified. It was like I was in a horror movie. It was horrible, right? Same thing?
Yeah. So yeah, but she enjoyed herself.
Yeah, well, so did he. He used to take apart the cars too, and like all the pieces. You go in there, and the mom would come out, my aunt, and her car would be like all taken apart. So maybe your sister or my cousin could have got together.
Oh God, that would have been the omen.
Yeah, it would have been the omen. Is she still? Speaking of that, do you have family close by, or are they still in Arkansas?
No, they live in Arkansas.
Okay, so you're you're in Palm Springs. So
I'm a city slicker.
I bet you are.
Yeah.
Yes, you are. So you're a city slicker, and you came out because your story I don't know. Now you're very well known. I know you can talk further about your Transgender Health and Wellness Center, which you're part of. And you have about 15 pages on your bio. That is many, many awards. I mean, you're not only politically an activist and a contributor to community. You're also fun.
I can be grumpy too. It just depends on what we're talking about.
Well, that's true. But I like your fun. So whenever you're on my show, you're fun. All right. So we like you fun. But so tell me, your past. So here you are, because your story is important. I think people they see you now, but what was our, how do we get here, and how do we get closer to our authentic self? So tell us more about it, from when you were a child and what it was like, and then, kind of through your adulthood.
Yeah. So, my mom, I told my mom I wanted to be a girl, and
how old were you when you did this?
I think I was 10, around there. That's after 50, those years start blending together like a pie, half-eaten pie. And she said, no, you're just confused. And so I tried to be a gay male. I lived as a gay male, but I was always very feminine. When I say very feminine, growing up, they would say, "What a beautiful daughter you have," to my father.
Really?
Yeah. And so because I didn't have facial hair, I had long hair. I was very fair looking. My voice didn't drop until I was probably in my 20s.
Quite late.
So it was very different.
And how did that make you feel when?
Always picked on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Always picked on in school.
By the boys or the girls? I mean, who
boys, and then the girls would just shun you because they were trying to impress the boys. Back then bullying was more of a victim blaming type thing. And so what they would do is they would just say, well, if you would toughen it up, you wouldn't have these problems. Or my dad would say, well, if you would just hurt him, he wouldn't do that. And that just wasn't my nature at the time.
Oh, so your dad said, go fight your own battles and go out there and punch him or something.
You're going to have to punch him,
right,
to establish yourself.
Well, were you, how tall were you? Were you?
Oh, I mean, you were kind of slight.
Were you slight framed?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I
was probably about 150 pounds.
Yeah, so you weren't abnormally, small. By any means. Yeah, right. No. Maybe on the shorter, smaller side, but not by any means. Because at that point in high school, kids grow up at different, especially boys. Yeah. Yeah,
it was a different world, and.
Did you like sports?
No, I liked the people playing the sports, but that was a different story. But
so as you got older. So here you are, like you look like a girl. You have the features. You've got the, like you said, lack of facial hair. Your voice is higher. Your parents said, no, you're not a girl. You need to go out and toughen up and be a boy. And then you're attracted to men. So now your sexuality kicks in, and you're like, I'm attracted to men. And so you then said, well, okay, well, I guess. And I've heard this before, and from one of my guests, decided that if she couldn't be the little girl that she was, that she would try living as a gay man, right? So
yeah, I tried to live as a gay man.
And how did that work out for you? I mean, what was your story then after you went? When did you had to leave Arkansas because you couldn't have been who you are there? Right?
Yeah, so I lived in Arkansas for some time and was very active in the community.
You were.
And was able to pull people together. To do things.
And then active doing what?
Well, we put on like the first gay pride picnic.
So you came out as a gay man and you got involved in activism early on. Okay.
Yeah, and so I was kind of the go-to person when I lived in Fort Smith, Arkansas. Like when Little Rock wanted to try to address equality back in the 80s, which was a beautiful theory.
Right.
But they're still fighting for equality now over there in Arkansas. But
so you were early on in the movement on that, and you think that they still haven't they didn't quite get it back in the 80s?
Oh no. We were still surviving the AIDS epidemic. I probably lost 97% of my friends.
Yeah, it's horrible. It was horrible.
And it's interesting because being so feminine back in the macho era, when people were like, you have to be super macho, you have to be all this masculine stuff, and those are the people who could develop relationships, and I never was able to do that. So sexual activity, I wasn't really sexually active because people weren't attracted to me. And back then,
you're saying that when you by people, you're saying gay men weren't attractive to you?
Mostly gay men were attracted to very masculine other men. It was that era.
Right.
macho men.
Right.
And so
this would have been the the 80s, right?
Maybe the 80s.
Mid 80s
Yeah.
was into like that power thing was going on, right? Wall Street,
Yeah.
excess.
Gay men don't have to be hairdressers. They can be anything, liberation, the whole thing.
And
I
then
can
they
be
were
a
into Wall Street and they were into cocaine.
Oh, yeah. There was a lot of that.
There was a lot of
I don't think they
cocaine
had cocaine in Arkansas. They had lots of weed and cows.
And that's true.
Yeah,
Their marijuana was strong there too, but it was a different time. So do you think when you were, you must have been lonely.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's if you're feeling like you're not fitting in now, you're like, okay, I'm going to live my life. I guess I'll have to be a gay man, and I still don't have people. Associating with
That's
me.
I had lots of people who were my friends or that would want to hang around with me or do things. But as far as any type of relationship material, I was probably the furthest of what people were looking for at that time because
So you felt prejudice really from the gay community?
Yes.
Okay.
That's been an ongoing issue even now.
Well, I say that because I can see that. I think I see that with the trans at whole. The gay community does. I've got obviously a lot of friends who are gay, and they don't. When I started into this journey on movement, as I call it, back in 2013. I had friends come up to me and that were gay and said, "Terry, you're doing this documentary on cross-dressing and crossing toward transgender, and we don't understand it. I don't get it." And I'm like, "You don't get it? No, I don't understand how that could happen or whatever." So I have to tell you, I think that I even can see myself from being such an advocate and an ally of the transgender community. I see prejudice. I see it even toward myself, and I do think that. I mean, to your point, and we're not here to talk about me, but I do think that I agree with you on the lack of tolerant behavior and support toward the transgender community and the LGBT.
It's one of those hit and miss. We have people who do support us and that understand us and want to embrace equality and everyone together. Then you have the others that are just, I'm here for what I can get, and this is what I've got, and I am not interested in different. Mm-hmm. But again, when you have that group of people, often what happens is they're the first ones to complain when they're treated different. And so really, if we're going to be inclusive in our community, we have to start just being conscious about it. There was a time probably in the 90s, I probably wasn't really hanging around a lot of lesbians. Back then it was the feminist movement. They had their camps where only women can go. And,
right, that's true though. I mean, I think they're pretty inclusive.
Crohn's,
I mean, to
you know
their,
what I'm saying?
Yes, I do.
And so I didn't understand it, and so I kind of was distant to it. But over time, I've developed friendships with lots of lesbians and a lot of really old, what I call radical lesbians, which I would not want them to be any other way. And I've embraced that. And the same as I've embraced diversity in the gay men and intersex people and things like that, because I felt it was like an obligation. Mm-hmm. Obligation, if I'm going to say I'm LGBT and I support LGBT equality,
right,
then by God, I need to kind of show it.
Well, I think you bring up a good point. I as a group, LGBT, Q now, I guess Q is back.
We call it the Alphabet Club.
You're right, the alphabet, so many. And as a GG or cisgender, which for years as a straight woman, I never called myself that, but
yeah.
now I'm a cisgender. But the reality is that, we're all in this together. And I think that as a unified force of movement of prejudice toward the transgender, which is happening in politics now and really is happening. It's not just poor me. I mean, people are still, and including the cross-dressers who, they need to come out more. If they would come out more and they feel comfortable, I think it would help, even if it's not it's so hard when you're trying to kind of live this double identity, as we talked about. But everyone's different, and everyone, I don't think you can force any kind of lifestyle on anyone, right? So, but I think to be open-minded is what you're saying. I think you have to get to know. Well, and I guess you don't have to. If you don't want to get to know a group, you don't have to get to know them. But it's I think in groups that have been prejudiced against in the past, it would behoove you to have some compassion for the groups that are being prejudiced.
It's interesting because it goes on to today. The difference is that my voice is a lot bigger than it was, in the 80s. So, people troll my Facebook all the time to see what's the latest. They keep up with that and stuff. And recently, there was a situation where the trans community was not invited into an event, and after they had been asked to be invited and volunteer, and
they got disinvited to an event.
We didn't get disinvited, but we also did ask to be invited, and then we were ignored. But then the gays and lesbians were invited, and so I had a lesbian tell me this, and I just closed my eyes. I says, she just doesn't get it. She says, well, you just need to keep on knocking on that door, and you'll be able to volunteer. And the first thing that went through my head was, since she's white, if I was a black person in black group or African Americans, would you say that? Mm-hmm. Do you see what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
And
right.
so there's this lack of consciousness when it comes to understanding how privilege and entitlement is not shared. Mm-hmm. Women have to work double as hard as men, and trans people have to work 3-4 times harder than cisgender women. Mm-hmm. And so there's a lack of...
well, I don't know if I agree with that. Being a cisgender woman, I mean, I like to get your back up on that because I worked hard my whole life. So, I mean, when you say work harder, let me just clarify that. When you say work harder for acceptance?
Well, no, just work harder for everything. Like even income and revenue.
But I mean, we have our own journeys. And as a cisgender woman, and I went through, and I'm older than you, so I went through a lot of prejudice, working in the 80s as a woman. I worked with 30 men. And
go get their coffee.
Yeah, they actually told me to get it, and I said, no, I'm an agent. I'm a commercial real estate agent like you. So I understand. I've always worked in male-dominated industry. So I guess the bottom line is we all have our battles, but I want to get back to you about, okay, so now you're in Arkansas, you're grassroots, you're working with the LGBT community, or LGBT at the time.
I don't even think there was a word for trans back then.
Yeah, there wasn't anything. So you're just you're the gays, basically.
The gays and lesbians. And the bis that were in the closet. Yeah.
So when where did you go from there?
Well, I kind of outgrew the city.
Mm-hmm. I would think so. My goodness.
Yeah, I couldn't. Yeah. I was just
How big was the town?
We were big. We were the second largest city, and that's 54,000.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. That's a hot tamale, huh?
Okay, so then
they didn't even have tamales back then.
Yeah. Well, no wonder, So how old were you? Left there mid-20s, late 20s? I mean,
my 20s or
all
so.
Right.
Yeah.
So where'd you go?
I went to Oklahoma City.
And
I really
was big.
love Oklahoma City.
Okay.
If I ever was to leave California, I'd probably move there. You got a large LGBT population that's into the arts, and they have a gay strip if you want to go to the bars, or I'm getting too old to do that stuff. I'm in 9 p.m. time to go to bed.
Right.
So it's a different thing, but and then from there I moved to LA.
So how long were you in Oklahoma?
A few years.
Okay.
Probably.
And was it progressive back then, or has it just gotten was it?
Yeah, it was. I mean, it had large arts a population, a lot of activity for the LGBT community, even though the governor was not supportive. I mean, Oklahoma, it was so funny. Tulsa still had a law in the books that you couldn't own a snake.
Oh.
Yeah, we're so people were importing their pet snakes, It was that's the type of world we live in, really, that's the biggest issue you have right now.
Yeah, so I went to school in Knoxville, Tennessee, so I got a little bit of that, So you left for a bigger market to LA, so you went to LA. Mm-hmm. And then how were you living there? Were you What were you still living as a gay man? I mean, when did you start? Okay.
Yeah. And so I finally decided to start. I lived in LA for some time, and then I basically decided to start, fully transitioning around 2004 or 6, somewhere around there.
Okay, so that was, got my math again, 13 years ago.
Yeah.
So you were probably, about 30, mid-30s maybe?
Yeah, around
Okay,
there.
so in your mid-30s, you're finally, did you have relationships with men at the time, gay men, or were you still kind of...
Well, back then it was a party scene.
Okay.
And so that was pre being free of substances.
Uh-huh.
So
you were out. Yeah, so you were part of that big city kind of life. And
yeah, I was turning the Russian men out. It was pretty nice back then, but I was like, okay. So, but that wasn't love. It was just a moment. And the problem with that is that people who just do that, it doesn't have really any substance. And so you're still, by the time you're done, yeah, it was great for the moment, but then you're back to empty.
Right.
And so,
well, that happens. I think that's yeah, it does. I mean,
so I was living that type of life, and then I had my moment, as you want to call it, where I decided that I didn't want to do anything like that and party anymore and do drugs and things, and I stopped using. Yeah. And so I've been clean since May 5th of 2003. Yes.
It's a long time. Congratulations. 2003, we were comparing
I've helped a lot
notes.
of people get off of it. I teach with the kids. The kids come to me and talk to me about it because they know I've been there.
Did you go to AA? Is that how you got sober?
No, I went to CMA, and it was too much of a circus for me in LA. I'm not speaking for this one here. I hear this one's really good here. But in LA, they were screaming and yelling at each other. And I was just like, you need psychotropic medication type thing. It was crazy. So I chose a path of individual counseling. Okay. And where I felt that I could get the most for what I needed. And then I would go occasionally to the meetings to hear their stories.
Right, because I'm a big fan of 12 stuff.
So hearing their stories are very important. We're storytellers by nature.
Right.
And
well, I think that was the most beneficial. I mean, I did the 90-90 after going to treatment up in St. Helena.
90-90?
Yeah,
I
went to
too.
treatment for 28 days, and then I went back out and drank, and then I came back out, and a couple of years later, I decided I better do that because I wanted to live, and I ended up.
I had to choose that.
You have to choose life.
Yeah.
I mean, and I saw. I can just almost tell when someone's been in the program, but it is a choice, and it's a choice of whether you want to live or die. And living, this is a gift to me. So that's the part that I imparted with it. So that's it's an interesting. I always say too is that we talk about, we're so hung up on these labels, and you're this and you've been involved so much in the community. Well, I said, once you're like, okay, I'm transgender, or I'm a woman, or I'm cisgender, or I'm gay, well, then what else are we, right? You and I are recovering alcoholics, addicts. That's part of who we are. I'm a singer. I'm someone who wanted to be a comedian. I guess I'm a defender of causes. So we're so many levels of people are levels of they're not just labels. They're many things, right? So
people are like onions. There's many layers.
That's right.
And
you got to get through that to
you do.
To be able to appreciate. And again, not everyone's as open-minded as you and I, and we have different journeys. I mean, not you and I. Well, we all have our own journey, but so I respect that. But I think that so let's go back to you. You're back in LA. You're in treatment, or you're getting sober and straight, and then you decide that you need to be who you are, which is you need to go forward with your transition.
Yeah. So I, when I was living in LA, one of the things my mother was begging me to move back to Arkansas, and she's like, "We're progressive. We got a Walmart," and I was like, "Okay, I guess I can try this." So I went back for a couple years back in Arkansas, and at the time, I was just like...
Was this after you transitioned?
Yeah, no, before I...
right before.
I was just about... No, I was starting to transition. My hair was getting long.
Right.
I was wearing more androgynous clothing, things like that. But I thought part of my journey for recovery wouldn't be a bad idea, just to step away.
Right. Go
And
back to, it makes sense, from LA to back to Oklahoma where it's safe. And
Arkansas, but to reboot.
Yeah.
To reboot. And so at the time I was,
Did you work at Walmart? Where your mom said there was a job?
No. I could not get a job because of what I was.
Oh,
my
okay.
God, it was awful.
They wouldn't hire you at the time.
No,
yeah,
even with my resume, I couldn't even. My father didn't believe me, and so we went to a movie rental store because they still have movie rental stores there. And I said, Dad, watch. So I got out of the car and I went to go get a application, and the man was refusing to give me an application, saying they're out. And I'm like pointing at him, saying they're right there. May I have one? And he was watching, and that was the moment when he says, you know what, you just don't belong here.
Oh wow!
And we're gonna we're gonna situate it where you can go back and start in California. That's where you belong with your people.
Was he embarrassed, do you think, of you, or do you think he just was looking out for your best interest? He didn't want you to get hurt.
Well, I think there was times that he was embarrassed of me, but also he was, growing up, he was a Fonzie. And if anybody knows what that is, but
why don't you tell us
and
what
my
a Fonzie?
mother tamed him, but so he's the type person that would just tell you, you can go stick it where the sun don't shine if you don't like it. And I think I kind of picked up that DNA occasionally with people.
I've heard.
Yes, I have been known to.
You do have a reputation, yes.
I have been very
the other side of
candid,
Thomi.
very candid at times. And people
Right.
are like, oh my God, here she goes. So Jeff Cruz calls it vintage Thomi. But so I do have that
gene.
That gene.
Right, you on your dad's footsteps. Yes.
And so
I'm going to call you Fonzie. If you pull that out at me one time, I'm going to say, hey, Fonzie.
Yeah. And so it was one of those things. And I think they just wanted me to be happy. And so, but later on when my mother passed, I was
you got time to spend with her. How many years were you?
For at least 3 years before she was, she died. So that made it, I think, kind of worth it. So I chose to see the good parts of it.
Right.
I couldn't fix the bad.
No, and you had time to spend with her, which we know, everyone's, time in life is limited. So.
And so it was a very tragic time when she passed. But
was it sudden, or did she have a long term?
No, she was in a really bad car accident.
Oh, so it was sudden. It was one day. It wasn't like a cancer or something that
all
you knew.
the Yorkies were in the car with her. It was a big
You had
thing.
Yorkies? I had a Yorkie.
Yeah, lots of little Yorkies. She used to take them to the beauty parlor every week. So that was her thing.
And they all died with her, Yorkies?
Yes.
Oh, my goodness.
Yes.
So someone just hit her?
Yeah, the hardest part with that is that I would break down and cry over was when the last Yorkie that lived would come out to the living room and look for her.
Oh, gosh.
That's the part that would just make me just
they're so attached.
melt. Because she would go right to her chair and like, where is she? I don't understand. And that's the part when I would just, it would just rip me apart.
Did you take her Yorkie with you when you went?
No, stayed with Dad.
Your daddy.
Yeah, and because, that's just where she belonged. And
did she live being... I mean, they're so attached. I had one for 9 years. I mean, mine still, I think, talks to me from the other side.
Yeah.
Someone told me, someone actually contacted me, I think that's clairvoyant, and said, Charlie was his name, said, Charlie wants me to tell you that he misses you.
Oh, that's sweet.
And I thought, oh my goodness, he's still talking to me.
Yeah. Well, it's all energy.
Yeah.
It is. It's all energy and consciousness. And so needless to say, I was able to spend some great time. It was a good time to show me how strong I could be, because there's a lot of stuff that was going on.
Did your mom, you think, you obviously had a good relationship with your mom?
Yes, we were closer than my father.
I was going to say close than your dad. Your dad sounds like it was tough to get close to anyway.
Yeah.
But
he came around after she passed.
Oh. So you ended up with a relationship with both.
I did.
And a certain, I don't know, is the word acceptance or more of a relationship or...
well, he came out to meet my my husband at the time, and I was like, Dad wants to come out and meet, my husband. Okay.
Wow.
So they came out in this RV with my sister Lisa, the one that he got along with, and he met him. He says, Mexicans make good gardeners. I said, Daddy, you cannot say that in California. Daddy, I know you're from Arkansas, but you cannot say that here. That's not, well, is he Hispanic? Yeah, so he does do the gardening? No, Daddy, no. Oh my God, Dad, I can't take you out anywhere.
Oh my God, I
can't.
can't.
So he would say things like this, and I'm just like, Dad, this is a different world here. We don't talk like that. And but back now, and I just laugh at it. I'm like, oh Lord have mercy, he was in his own world.
Yeah. Well, they can't. I know I have one of those too. I mean, mine's still around, but he's 86. But
he tried.
They can't help themselves. I mean, it just comes out. They really.
He came out and was working on closure because he had throat cancer, so he knew time was relevant now.
And he made the effort to come out and do that, which I think for them, I know my parents are it's hard to get them out of their town. That's big time. I mean, that was like, this is big for me. I want to make sure that I do this right. I'm a strong man. I can see where you get some good, really some good.
Well, he was a very
parents.
Strict person, which, to be honest with you, I needed.
Right. Well, it sounds like your sister did too.
Yeah, well, she needed a lot of it.
She's still bouncing off the walls. Did she ever settle down?
She's still taking meds now. So
wonderful. Good. She's coming up.
She's we don't talk.
I want to I could talk to you for hours, so I'm going to have you back, but these are like a half an hour show. But I do want you to just say something before we close out. Tell us a little bit about your center and, the information for people that may not know about it, and if they'd like to, donate time, what you're looking for.
Yeah, so time is always finding good quality volunteers that are retired would be wonderful, because you try to become more professional as you can, and do a business model. So in 2014 I opened the Transgender Community Coalition and started changing everything, working on healthcare policy reform, opening access points for trans people. Then in May of 2018, we opened the Transgender Health Wellness Center. So it's like believed to be like the sixth one of its kind. And Alabama has one. Can you believe that? Alabama has one before we had one. Wow. I mean, like, what?
Well, they had, all it takes is one leader who has the courage to do that. But Alabama, that is amazing.
Alabama,
I mean, they didn't even like lipstick and makeup. They called you whores back in the 70s.
They have dry counties, too.
Yes,
and so basically we opened it and it grew, and it's done phenomenally well. The issue, of course, always is funding. So people
Can
think
you get grants for?
We're old enough now. We're actually doing our certified CPA audit right now.
Super, because the grant writing, if you can get maybe someone that can volunteer that's done grant writing, someone that can really, because those are the it's hard now with you can only donate so much to charities and.
Well, he did that on purpose.
I know.
Yeah,
I know for tax write-offs, which really is not a great thing. So I think that the grants are it's finding the money. We know there's some money in there, and it's being able to find it. So
and so the thing with it is that we're about to we're doing our certified CPA audit right now, which that means it opens you up. They have a CPA attorney that audits everything, and then they give you the blessing. And then you can move forward for funding. And so we don't think we're going to have a problem with that. And so...
Well, they need
you have to have the blessing. So the blessing's the most expensive part of it.
How many years did that take? A couple of years to be established? How long did you
about a year and a half.
Yeah, you have to prove that you're a viable organization, 501c3.
Yeah, and so one of the things that after we do that, then we can start doing it. But
okay, and then how do they find you, what's your website?
Oh, www.trans.health, and then we also have www.transcc.org.
Okay.
And so we do.
And you're in Cathedral City, and you're really close to.
We do all of it. We help Inland Empire.
You cover everything, and I commend you, because it's not easy. I've started not for profits, and and I look forward to having you back.
Anytime.
You and I can talk forever. So thank you so much.
We didn't get through our questions.
I know we did. Just
what's that? My God, we just got chatty Cathy. Remember
After
that?
The first year, I want you to have happy holidays. Okay, we're gonna pick this up in January, you and I. Okay. And I want to thank everyone out there for joining me today. I am really humbled to be part of the conversation on gender identity. And I really do invite you to keep listening. You can find previous shows at www.kgay106.5. Also, I want to thank Coachella Media for allowing me to do the show. And again, I thank you so much for being part of the conversation and
Anytime.
for aiding the community.
No, I really hope that we see you at on November 20th.
Yes.
The Transgender Day Remembrance. It's right down the street from you.
I will be there.
All right.
All right. Thank you so much, Tommy. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Free.